Hi, this is Lorrie Bradford for St. Andrews in Winthrop. Um, in this pandemic time, I've been thinking about meetings. We do a lot of meetings on Zoom. We do a lot of meetings by telephone, by distance. And I was thinking of the different kinds of meetings we were doing and different kinds of meetings I know some people are not doing, which really, kind of worries me. Because we all need the socialization, we all need the contact. So in my thinking about meetings, I was thinking about some of the meetings downtown in Winthrop itself. And I came across a passage that I thought would be appropriate. Okay, and a man who confesses his sins in the presence of a brother knows that he is no longer alone with himself. He experiences the presence of God in the reality of other person. It's by Dietrich Bonner. And this is from a book about grace by Max Lucado. Okay, can't say his name right. Lucado, thank you. And this is his writing. I like beer. I always have, ever since my high school buddy and I drank ourselves sick with a case of quarts. I have liked beer. I like the way it washes down a piece of pizza, mutes a slice of enchiladas, and goes great with peanuts at the baseball game, and seems an appropriate way to crown 18 holes of golf. Out of the keg, tap, bottle, or frosty mug, it doesn't matter to me. I like it. Too much. Alcoholism haunts my family ancestry. I have early memories of following my father through the halls of a rehab center to see his sister. Similar scenes repeat themselves with other relatives for decades. Beer doesn't mix well with my family DNA. So at the age of 21, I swore off it. I never made a big deal out of my abstinence or someone else's indulgence. I differentiate between drinking and drunkenness and decided, in my case, the former would lead to the latter, so I quit. Besides, I was a seminary student for the next 2 years, then a minister for 3 years, then a missionary for 5, then a minister again for 22 years and counting. I wrote Christian books and spoke at Christian conferences. A man of the cause shouldn't chum with Heineken products, right? So I didn't. Then a few years back, something resurrected my cravings. Too many commercials, too many baseball games, too many Episcopal friends. Just kidding. I don't know. Quite literally, it was just thirst. The South Texas heat can rage like a raging fire. At some point, I reached for a can of brew instead of a can of soda. As quick as you can pop the top, I was a beer fan again. At once in a while, then once a week, then once a day beer fan. I kept my preferences to myself. No beer at home, at least my daughter thinks less of me. No beer in public. Who knows who might see me? None at home, none in public, leaves only one option, convenience store parking lots. For about a week, I was the guy that the car drinking out of the brown paper bag. No, I don't know what resurrected my cravings, but I remember what stunted them. En route to speak at a man's retreat, I stopped for my daily purchase. I walked out of the convenience store with a beer pressed against my side, scurried to my car for fear of being seen, opened the door, climbed in, and opened the can. Then it dawned on me. I had become the very thing I hate, hypocrite, a pretender, two-faced, acting one way, living the other. I hid in sermons about the people like me, Christians, who care more about appearance than integrity. It wasn't the beer, it was the cover-up that nauseated me. I knew what I needed to do. I'd written sermons about that too. If we say we have no sin, we are fooling ourselves, and the truth is not in us. But if we confess our sins, He will forgive our sins, because we can trust God to do what is right. He will cleanse us from all the wrongs we have done. That's John 1. Confession. The word conjures up images, not all of which are positive. Backroom interrogations, Chinese water torture, emitting a dalliance to a priest who sits on the other side of a black curtain, walking down the church aisle and filling out a card, Is this what John had in mind? Confession is not telling God what he doesn't know. Impossible. Confession is not complaining. If I merely recite my problems and rehash my woes, I'm whining. Confession is not blaming. Pointing fingers at others without pointing any at me feels good, but it doesn't promote healing. Confession is so much more. Confession is a radical reliance on grace, a proclamation of our trust in God's goodness. What I did was bad, we acknowledge, but your grace is greater than my sins, so I confess it. If our understanding of grace is small, our confessions will be small, reluctant, hesitant, hedged with excuses and qualifications, full of fear of punishment. But great grace creates an honest confession. Like the one of the prodigal who prayed, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son, Luke 15. Or the confession of the tax collector who begged, God, be merciful to me, a sinner, Luke 18. His best known prayer or confession came from King David, even though he took interminably a long time to offer it. This Old Testament hero dedicated a season of his life to making stupid, idiotic, godless decisions. Stupid decision 1. David didn't go to war with his soldiers. He stayed home with much too much time on his hands, apparently romance on his mind. While walking in his balcony, he spotted Bathsheba, a bathing beauty, bathing. Stupid decision number 2. David sent his servants to the chauffeur Bathsheba to his palace and escort into his bedroom, where rose petals carpet the floor and champagne chilled in the corner. A few weeks later, she told him she was expecting his child. David, still living the fog of bad choices, continued to streak. Stupid decision 3, 4, and 5. David decided Bathsheba's husband murdered him, deceived Bathsheba's husband, murdered him, and behaved as he had done nothing wrong. The baby was born, and David was still unrepentant. Yes, David, the man after God's own heart, allowed his own to calcify. He suppressed his wrongdoings and paid a steep price for doing so. He later described it this way: when I refused to confess my sin, I was weak and miserable, and I groaned all day long. Day and night, your hand of discipline was heavy on me. My strength evaporated like the water in the summer heat. Psalms 32. Sin's reality replaced sin's euphoria. David began to see in Bathsheba not a picture of beauty, but a symbol of his own weakness. Could he see her face with imagining the face of her husband, whom he had betrayed? Most of all, could he look at her and not sense the gaze of God upon himself? He knew his secret sin was no secret at all. Finally, he prayed, O Lord, do not rebuke me in your anger, or discipline me in your wrath. For your arrows have pierced me, and your hand has come down upon me. There is no health in my body. My bones have no soundness because of my sin. My wounds fester and are loathsome because of my sinful folly. My back is filled with searing pain. Psalm 38. Bury misbehavior and expect pain, period. Unconfessed sin is a knife blade lodged in the soul. You cannot escape the misery it creates. Ask Li Fuyun, this Chinese man who tried every treatment imaginable to ease his throbbing headaches. Nothing helped. An X-ray finally revealed the culprit. A rusty 4-inch knife blade had lodged in his skull for 4 years. In an attack by a robber, Fuyun had suffered lacerations on the right side of his jaw. He didn't know the blade had broken off inside his head. No wonder he suffered from stabbing pains. Sorry, he couldn't resist that. We can't live with foreign objects buried in our bodies or souls. What would an X-ray of your interior reveal? Regrets over a teenage relationship? Remorse over a poor choice? Shame about a marriage that didn't work? The habit you couldn't quit? The temptation you didn't resist? Or the courage you couldn't find? Guilt lies hidden beneath the surface, festering, irritating, sometimes so deeply embedded you don't know the cause. You become moody, cranky, you're prone to overreact, you're angry, irritable, You can be touchy, you know, understandable, since you have the shank of shame lodged in your soul. Interested in an extraction? Confess. Request a spiritual MRI. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my anxieties. See if there is any wicked way in me, and lead me in the other way everlasting. Psalms 139. As God brings misbehavior to mind, agree with him and apologize. Let him apply grace to the wounds. Don't make this inward journey without God. Many voices urge you to look deep within and find invisible strength and power. A dangerous exercise. Self-assessment without God's guidance leads to denial or shame. We can either justify our misbehavior with 1,001 excuses or design and indwell a torture chamber. Justification or humiliation, we need both. We need neither. We need a prayer of grace-based confession, like David's. After a year of denial and a cover-up, he finally prayed, God, be merciful to me because you are loving. Because you are always ready to be merciful, wipe out all my wrongs, wash away my guilt, make me clean again. I know about my wrongs, and I can't forget my sin. You are the only one I have sinned against. I have done what you say is wrong. You are right when you speak and fair when you judge. Psalms 51. David waved the red flag and no more combat, no more arguing with heaven. He became clean with God. And you? Your moment might look something like this. Late evening, bedtime, the pillow beckons, and so does your guilty conscience. And enter with a coworker turned nasty earlier in the day. Words were exchanged, accusations made, lines drawn in the sand, names called, tacky behavior. You bear some, if not most, of the blame. The old version of you would have suppressed the argument, crammed it into an already crowded cellar of unresolved conflicts. Slap putty on a rotten wood. The quarrel would have festered into bitterness and poisoned another relationship. But you aren't the old version of you. Grace is happening, rising like a morning sun over a winter meadow, scattering shadows, melting frost, warmth. God doesn't scowl at the sight of you. You once thought he did, arms crossed, angry, perpetually ticked off. Now you know better. You've been Boazed and bought, foot washed and indwelled by Christ. You can risk honesty with God. You tell the pillow to wait, and you step into the presence of Jesus. Can we talk about today's argument? I'm sorry that I reacted in the way I did. I was harsh, judgmental, impatient, and you have given me so much grace. I gave so little. Please forgive me. There, doesn't that feel better? No special occasion required, no chant, no candle, just prayer. Prayer will likely prompt an apology, and an apology will quite possibly preserve a friendship and protect a heart. You might even hang a sign on your office wall. Grace happens here. Or maybe your prayer needs to probe deeper. Beneath the epidermis of today's deeds are the unresolved actions of years past. Like King David, you made one stupid decision after another. You stayed when you should have gone. You looked where you should have turned. Seduced when you should have abstained. Hurt when you should have helped. Denied when you should have confessed. Talk to God about these buried blades. Go to him as you would to a trusted physician. Explain the pain. Revisit the transgression together. Welcome his probing and healing touch. And, this is important, trust his ability to receive your confession more than your ability to make it. Oh, that unruly perfectionist who indwells us. He raised cankerous doubts. Was my confession sufficient? Did I forget any sin? Of course you did. Who among us knows all our violations? Who of us has felt sufficient remorse for our failings? If the cleansing of the confession depends on the confessor, we are all sunk, for none of us have confessed accurately or adequately. The power of confession lies not with the person who makes it, but the God who hears it. God may send you to talk to the church. Confess your sins to one another and pray for one another so that you may be healed. James 5. James calls us not to confess up to God, but to confess out to each other. I did this. You're wondering what happened with my hypocrisy. First, I threw the can of beer in the trash. Next, I sat in the car for a long time praying. Then I scheduled a visit with our church elders. I didn't embellish or downplay my actions. I just confessed them. And they, in turn, pronounced forgiveness over me. Jim Potts, a dear silver-haired saint, reached across the table, put his hand on my shoulder, and said something like this: "What you did was wrong, but what you're doing tonight is right. God's love is great enough to cover your sin. Trust His grace." That was it. No controversy, no brouhaha, just healing. After talking to the elders, I spoke to the church. At our midweek gathering, I once again told the story. I apologized for my duplicity and requested the prayers of the congregation. What followed was a refreshing hour confession in which other people did the same. The church has strengthened, not weakened by our honesty. I thought the church in ancient Ephesus was where many of the believers began to confess openly and tell all the evil things they had done. Acts 19. The result of the confession? So a powerful way the word of the Lord kept spreading and growing. That's Acts 20. People are attracted to honesty. Find a congregation that believes in confession. Avoid a fellowship of perfect people. You will not fit in. But seek one where members confess their sins and show humility, where the price of admission is simply an admission of guilt. Healing happens in a church like this. Followers of Christ have been given authority to hear confession and proclaim grace. If you forgive the sins of any, they are forgiven them. If you retain the sins of any, they are retained. John 20. Confessors find a freedom that deniers don't. If we say we have no sin, we're fooling ourselves, and the truth is not in us. But if we confess our sins, He will forgive our sins because we can trust God to do what is right. He will cleanse us from all the wrongs we have done. 1 John 1. Oh, the sweet certainty of these words. He will cleanse us. Not He might, could, would, or had been known to. He will cleanse you. Tell God what you did. Again, it's not that He doesn't already know, but the two of you need to agree. Spend as much time as you need. Share all the details you can, then pour the pure water of grace over your mistakes. And then let us celebrate with a soda. And that ends today. Thank you very much for listening.
Bye.
Thank you, Lorrie.
Thank you, Lorrie.
Appreciate it.
Have a wonderful day.
You all have a beautiful day.